No, I think I know what you're going to segue into, and I think it's a good that we just ended talking about the players who are already in the WNBA, because yeah, there's a lot of them. Like, we can't forget like Sabrina, Stewart, yada yada yada. The list goes on and on. I mean, you didn't even bring up Asia Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces crew. Um,
True.
is they're already operating at a loss every single year, even with these players. So this new group, if the WNBA can't take advantage of this, will they ever?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So the kind of add on to that. So this really kind of it adds on to, if people didn't already know, they definitely found out for sure how little the WNBA players make, because they saw Caitlin Clark. They know, the whole public knows about her. I already mentioned this before, but they saw her contract. I believe what it was like 5 years, 4 years, $300,000, basically making like upper 60s with each year going to lower 70s. Saw people joking about this is the same salary that a straight B student from Shippensburg who got his accounting job makes. Funny joke, but it's true, and everybody's all up in arms saying, "How the hell does Caitlin Clark, who's the best player ever, make this little money in the WNBA?" It's quite simple. It's just a business, and you alluded to it. They are losing money every single year. I believe a few years ago the NBA, released their, I forget what the official name of it is, but financial report, yearly financial report. If you didn't know, you'll learn today. The NBA actually finances the WNBA, and they reported that the WNBA actually loses $10 million per year. Um, so what does that mean? Well, number one, it means the contracts aren't so high, because if you're losing all this money, you can't pay super big contracts to these players. Um, Two, why does this happen? It's a business. It's everybody gets so up in arms about, well, why aren't they making money? When really they should be like, well, why aren't you supporting? Why aren't you watching them on TV? Why aren't you driving up their viewership so they can have you know uh, discussions and what's the word, negotiations for higher TV deals? Why aren't you buying tickets to go to games? Why aren't you buying jerseys? Like that. That's the main problem. Like that, they need that revenue. Really, it comes a lot from TV deals. That's where the meat and potatoes and really just all the money that the NBA gets is from those TV deals. Just the viewership is low, so like the networks, they don't want to pay that top dollar. Even if the NBA is kind of sponsoring it. So it's all business. It's business 101. Um, what I will say is that, you know, Caitlin Clark made a lot of money in college, and it wasn't like Iowa was paying her. Those were all sponsorships, different NIL deals. Caitlin Clark is still going to get the bag. Angel Reese is still going to get the bag. These players are still going to get their bags through, promotional sponsorships. And I think they need to like overload it. They need to put like faces all over the place. The WNBA really needs to market these players. The NBA does a fantastic job with it. NFL, I believe, does a good job with it, and hockey and baseball do an absolute terrible job at it. And WNBA is just like that. Um, I do think there was a stigma going around, just people just being sexist, that whenever they see WNBA highlights, they're like writing all sorts of mean stuff. But I think Caitlin Clark kind of broke that. She kind of, like, the way that she was balling, she broke that, and then she opened it up. And I think Angel Reese fit in perfectly right there with the different personality. Like, we saw tenacity, we saw aggression, we saw, like a bully in a sense, like a villain, maybe I should say, but like a good villain, a villain that like people can root for, not because they're a bad person, but just because it's just like what they are. Kind of like I would kind of relate to her kind of like a Draymond Green, not the way she plays, but the way she carries herself on the court. Like, her job is to get under your skin, and when she gets under your skin, she's not leaving, and she's going to dominate you. Um, But yeah, that was a really big sort of conversation and discourse going on. It was just people were like, "What? She ain't making anything. This is terrible. This is sexist. They should be making more money." And it's like, really, you should be pointing your fingers at the front office of the WNBA buildings and be like, "You guys need to do your job better so these girls can get paid." And also look at yourself in the mirror and be like, "I need to do better as a fan and watch these games, tweet about these games, post about these games, be excited about these games, you know?" So that's really all it is. I don't think people could really wrap around their finger. I just think people just love at the end of the day making it a men versus women debate. I don't. It's not at all a men versus women debate. It's simple business. It's business debate.
Yeah, straight facts. You covered a lot of that exceptionally well. I could only add on. It's like you said, look at yourself in the mirror if you are someone who's like, why are they making, or why aren't they making enough? Like, this is like, it's sexist, or it's, it's not a, it's a, it's hypocritical. Like, because if you don't know this is how much they're making, which has been the case, and it's honestly, it might have, it honestly it has even gone down, but it definitely hasn't gone up because WNBA, like I said, operates as a lot at a loss every year. They lose $10 million every year. If you didn't know this was happening, you're obviously not tapped into the WNBA. Therefore, you're not contributing. I mean, look at this. Like, this is well, I can't even say this because this, I didn't give the NBA my money for this. But hey, the Sixers sweatshirt right here. This is that's part of the money towards the NBA. The countless Sixers games I go to every year. The
Mm-hmm.
years of my life that I sacrifice to the NBA. And I'm not the most tapped into the WNBA in my life. I definitely haven't ever been, but I've been aware. But now, definitely, man, definitely, definitely. The last thing I'll say about this is at the beginning of this segment, I kind of was like, Caitlin Clark is the LeBron, but she needs to be the Jordan. And what I meant by that is the reason that the WNBA has been like down is just and has been just kind of irrelevant. I hate to say irrelevant, but it's just been, you know, it's because I haven't
Yeah.
had a Jordan. Like the NBA, this was the NBA before Jordan. Maybe Magic and Bird, but before Jordan, like it just exploded. And they could market everything, like Jordan logos everywhere, and that linked right back to the NBA. And then people were like, "Wow, like this." And then from there, it just was like, boom. People had somebody to look up to, an idol, and then the talent just kept exploding, and people kept getting better and better. That's why people think Jordan's the GOAT. And that's why sometimes I can't like refute that argument because he did start this. Like, there is no LeBron without Jordan. There is nothing without Jordan. WNBA needs that. Is it going to be Caitlin Clark? It needs to be. I think it needs to be. It's got to be somebody. It's got to be somebody. I think it could be CC.
I think you brought up two different points. So I think another thing that people, first thing I want to say is it's all a gradual process. NBA went through it too. You mentioned it a little bit, kind of using the Jordan thing, but the NBA finals, back in the Bird and Magic days, were on tape delay, live TV tape delay. They weren't even live games in the NBA finals back in the 80s. And players before that, like it wasn't like they were making millions of dollars either too when the league first started. It just takes some time, takes some tractions. It takes those players. I think you got like your Wilt Chamberlains, kind of like your Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlains, Pete Maravich you mentioned earlier, kind of like that first little wave. Dr. J, with that. Then you got Magic and Bird.
Yeah,
Magic and Bird was huge for the league.
trailblazer.
They needed that. Yeah. And then I think, but Jordan really put it on like a global stage because of his greatness. But I think another thing too is like we talk about marketability. Nike really helped out the NBA as well with the Air Jordans, all those different advertisements. And that brought like it put it in a consumer sense. But now you're bringing NBA from a consumer side of things. Now they're going to tune in because they're like, what does it mean to fly like Mike? Why is Spike Lee telling me on the TV I want to be like Mike? Like I watch his movies. Let me see what the heck this Mike guy's about. Then you watch him play, and you're like, holy shit, this guy's different dimension. And that's
Yep.
the same with Caitlin Clark.
Gatorade
I think
too.
like you
Like,
just
oh, let
got.
me drink Gatorade. Be like Mike.
I just think there's a. I don't know, but like you have to put me in the room. If I was a marketer or something, and somebody paid me to figure out ideas, I would sit down and think of ideas. But nobody pays me to do that, so I won't. But I think like you have to think of a way that is very unique of using Caitlin Clark in like an organic but like sort of marketable way. Kind of like how Jordan did with his sneakers and stuff. It's hard now because everything is just so like there's been so many different things that have opened. It's it's tough being an innovator. It's tough being a trailblazer. That's why they are trailblazers and they're not like the rest of the guys. So I think that's something with it too. But I think those are all great points. I just wanted to just reemphasize that like it's not like the NBA was top dog or top anything when it first started. Heck, they had the merge and all this stuff, and then they had tape delays,
Yeah.
all this stuff. So it takes years and years and years. That was 40 years ago. With that, WNBA has been around for what 15 something years, not long. It hasn't been long.
No.
So it's still
There's only
quite
12
fresh.
teams.
Yeah, and there's only 12 teams. I know they're thinking about expanding. I think this is also, I'm glad we talked about that too. This is what I wanted to bring up. As far as, I said Liberty is probably the closest team to me. WNBA needs to like not put their teams in Philly, Miami. Like they don't need to put teams there. They should put teams where there's just nothing going on. Think about, we mentioned UConn. It's in the middle of nowhere. But that fan base, that excitement, there's like passion because that's the closest sports team that they got. I think it's like I know it's a big risk because it's not a big market, but I think if you can find like a town that does not have many sports teams around and it doesn't like compete, which I mean WMAC is not like it competes with anything, but like I'm trying to think of like sort of like little town somewhere, but like I think Nashville would be good. Nashville has the Predators and I know the Titans, but like that could be I was thinking more like Midwesty though. Like I think Des Moines should get a team in Iowa because there's really no basketball near there at all. But there's a lot of basketball players that kind of come from the Midwest region. It's a pretty easy place to
Yeah.
hold or whatever. I just think like we're looking at big market teams because like you want to go to Miami, you got to compete with the Dolphins, the Hurricanes, um, the Heat. You got Orlando right up there. I just think if you can find some places where there aren't that many teams, so you're not competing with those big markets, even though you're in a small market town, I think you get higher fan support and like real fan support that are gonna come to the games and really feel attached. I just think like that's what you need.
That's a great point. The only thing I'll counter with is Philly. I think would just because Philly's just a team that just I don't know. I feel like they would latch on, and especially if they got like, dude, put Page in Philly, man, put Page in Philly. Whew, that's I'm buying that jersey. What for like the Philly the Philly Liberty or no, that's New York. Philly Bells or something. Ooh,
Yeah, yeah, you could do that. Could
Page
do
on
that.
Philly Bells. But no, I like I like everything else you got to say though. Like it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. Nashville. I saw the commish Kathy Engelbert was like she like spewed off a list of names. Philly was one of them. Nashville was another. South Florida, you mentioned. Toronto and Denver are two more that I think Toronto maybe like look to expand a little bit north into Canada. I think that could be a good
Yeah,
idea. Um,
yeah.
I like that
Denver.
Iowa idea though, because I mean, shit, like they obviously have a lot of basketball love for basketball out there. So
Yeah, the Midwest loves like
sold a football stadium out.
maybe do somewhere. Oh no, they got the Indiana fever, so like that's there. Like I like the Colorado. I would, Minnesota Lynx. There's one there. Like you just got to try to find the places where there aren't much sports going on. Like I saw a map on Twitter, and it was literally like what goes on in this section of the United States, and it showed where all the sports teams are on the map, and it was like North Dakota, South Dakota, I think it's like Wyoming, basically like that northern part of the United States. There's just like no teams. Granted, a lot of snow. I get that. But we
Mm-hmm.
got teams in Minnesota and you got Canadian teams. So like travel is definitely could be done. Maybe, Wyoming, I think, is the least populated state. So maybe don't put a team in Wyoming. But like you're telling me, throw a team in North or South Dakota, like they're going to love that. They have no professional teams in there and that'll be their first professional team. Um, but I don't know. That's just a little idea, but I'm sure they'll probably go to like they'll probably add another LA team and go to Miami or something. But oh well.
But hey, that's also another ode to following the money, and because those cities are probably going to maybe be able to dish out the most in terms
Yeah,
of like facilities and such.
yeah,
So it'll be interesting, but we'll be on top of it. I'm keeping my finger on WNBA. I got a little bit into it last year in the summer, just because being out of school and everything. I don't know. Um, I just had a little more time on my hands. I was like, baseball sucks. I can't watch the Phillies all summer, and I'm excited to do the same thing yet again.
yeah, yeah. So am I. Should be great.